right, thank you for staying with Daybreak. Keep your views coming at Trevor Mbija at Citizen TV Kenya. Use the hashtag Daybreak. We're going to sample some of them. Are we winning the war against corruption? That's a conversation we're having. And Colonel, before we came back from the break, you're talking about the challenges that you're facing as ARA and why it should be the avenue that people should take. Yeah.
Right. Thank you, Trevor. So for the fight against corruption is really a two-pronged approach.
Yeah.
The prosecution that Wakili has been talking about, and then there's asset recovery process, which, as has been stated, is a civil process.
Yeah.
So it is indeed a shorter process. Right? The challenges that we've had is that, first of all, the society as a whole has not understood the whole asset recovery process. It has been in the books since the year 2009, as I stated, but we had not put it operationalized. The institutions that are supposed to discharge that mandate, now the institutions have been operationalized. Now we have had to engage with all the stakeholders in these asset recovery processes, and especially the judiciary. We've had the jurisprudence grown on that, so that now people are understanding the tool that is available to the society to fight not just corruption, but all criminal activities generally. Yeah. It is a civil process, so that what happens if you have engaged in the, you have taken, let's say you have looted, like the NSSF case that we are talking about. Yeah. And we start with the process. We come on board at the beginning of the investigation. We don't come at the tail end of it, because majority of the people seem to think that we come after a conviction has been obtained. There's that route. Actually, the law also allows for that route, that we wait for the prosecution to do their thing. You go through the Chief Magistrate's court. You have been prosecuted. You have been convicted. Upon conviction, then the Asset Recovery Agency can come and make an application for those assets that were in question, or the benefit that this person has acquired through this criminal activity, be forfeited to the state. That is one route that is availed to the Asset Recovery Agency under the law. Right, but that route, we have to wait until the conviction. Yeah. So it is not going to yield quicker fruits if we take that route. There is another route that the same law has availed to the state, because the law is for us as a state, which is the civil process. What does that mean? Where the ODPP will charge you, the investigators will do their investigations. If the evidence is enough, then you'll be presented before court. ODPP will prosecute that matter. Then ARA, if this person has acquired some economic advantage, some benefit that accrued from his criminal activity, then we come and do what the law has called preservation. We preserve, which is a civil process again. Tell the court there is a suspicious activity that has happened here, or this is an illicit benefit from some activity, some criminal activity, and we are requesting that it be preserved. The law allows for the preservation for a period of 90 days. Yeah. Yes? Now, within the course of those 90 days, first of all, we are supposed to announce and put it in the Gazette, to just make it known to everybody. We have acquired Omari's property, big car. So if you have anything to come and tell us about it, please come within those 90 days, all right? Within those 90 days, we are also supposed to now invite Omari or whoever, come tell us about this case. We are now identifying and tracing and trying to actually pinpoint, is there an illegality in the acquisition of this property? Once that is then established and we have convinced ourselves that indeed it is a proceed of crime, then we file for forfeiture of that property to the state. Now, and that is what Omari has been saying, this is the distinction between the prosecution and the civil forfeiture that we're talking about. When we do file for the forfeiture, then the burden shifts. The burden is no longer on the state for us to prove beyond reasonable doubt that indeed Trevor acquired this property on, from stealing. The burden will shift to you, Trevor, because it's a civil process, to explain to us, how did you acquire this property? And that is why it becomes the best tool that we have at our disposal as a state to fight corruption, to fight criminalities, and deterrence. Because at the end of the day, we are hoping that indeed it is as much punitive. The prosecutors will charge you and take you through the processes so that you're convicted, so that it can be punitive to you, the person. At the same time, we want the process to be a deterrence to the rest of the society, so that the rest of the society can keep away from this criminal activity. Yes.
But we don't seem to be using it much. Is it because people don't understand it?
Okay. Thank you for that, Trevor. And that's why I'm here. It's not that we are not using it much. Indeed, we have had quite some gains in the asset recovery process, right? But like I've told you, it was in the books. It had not been operationalized, and the Asset Recovery Agency was operationalized in 2015, thereabout. Yes, so, and like I'm saying, the jurisprudence, it is a tool that has not been well understood in the society. So this is a time where the courts have established the law as it is.
Yeah.
You know, this is, they have interpreted the law for us, and they're saying this is a tool that is available for us. And so now people are understanding the tool that is available to us, and we are using it quite a lot.
Okay.
Yes.
Sheila, I usually like to get solutions. Now we see what the issues are. What are the solutions to this? How do we strengthen the institutions? Are there even too many to begin with? Because you see now the ARA, people are trying to understand how that works. There's Mari trying to make sure that their clients get out of jail free. How do we fix this system to ensure that it is so watertight that when a case begins, it ends and convictions are done, there are no loopholes, done and dusted?
Well, one, as I mentioned earlier, the capacity strengthening for the relevant institutions is key. We have EACC, DCI, Kenya Police, who are charged with the investigation of corruption. We have the ODPP responsible for prosecution. We have the judiciary for adjudication. And of course, we have also critical institutions like the ARA, FRC as well, as provided for under POCAMLA. I think it's important that these institutions are strengthened. One way for me is by ensuring that they're adequately resourced. As I mentioned earlier, out there, they're facing very strong legal defense teams, and it's becomes very difficult to scale those very high walls of defense that the likes of my friend Wakili Omari normally put up, as he has explained. So capacity strengthening is key. I know that there have been efforts even towards exposing them and benchmarking with what's happening in other jurisdictions, but just maybe as part of this also, let me also address the whole question around case management, because I think Omari has cast some aspersions in terms of how it's been done now and whether we can even conclude these cases within 6 months. I still believe that we can. I know that there have been attempts, and there are some cases, like the Erad case, I think took 2 years, and I think there's another one, I'm trying to remember which one, which also recently took less than 2 years. Some have taken 5 years, like the Wario case on the Rio Olympic scandal, and so on. But I strongly feel that if we put in place active case management tools and protocols, as we have with election petitions, these are the things we can be able to achieve within 6 months. Nothing stops us. Even that whole suggestion by Wakili about, okay, where are these cases even had in the first place? I know the question, though, that will be asked is the capacity of, like, some of the magistrates' courts, because that was the reason why the anti-corruption courts was put in place, where even the capacity of this, the judicial officers to be able to hear and determine and adjudicate these cases seamlessly was also addressed, in terms of what is the, what are other countries doing in regard to corruption cases and so on. So there was a bit of capacity building as well for these specific judicial officers dealing with anti-corruption. So maybe that's something that we also want to look at. I think it's a good suggestion to look at in terms of, okay, where are these cases had, but I think there's that whole issue of capacity also of judicial officers that has to be addressed. I know that the CJ, if you've had speakers talked severally about being determined to reduce, of course, not just corruption cases, but other cases. Addressing the whole backlog of cases. Among them is, concerns is the corruption cases. So I believe that if they were able to sit with lawyers, as lawyers, the legal fraternity, the bar, the bench, and also with these institutions, and even, can I say, platforms that have been formed just for that. We have the court user committees that brings together the legal fraternity, the courts, the likes of EACC and even others involved in investigation, and even ODPP. There's the National Council on the Administration of Justice as well. This as opposed to be, these are channels, again, to deal with this whole and bring all these actors together. The multi-agency team. He's talked about who has the mandate. Is it EACC or the police? As I sit here as a Kenyan, for us, we don't care. We just want corruption cases to be dealt with, whether it is EACC, whether it is DCI. I am paying you with my tax money.
You want results
to deal with those things. I'm paying ARA. I'm paying ODPP. So come together and have those platforms where you're able to collaborate. I believe that's why the multi-agency team is there, to be able to deal with some of this bottleneck and also bring them to a point where they're able to discuss and agree on processes and also address challenges in terms of how to address corruption cases. Same to the NCAJ and same to the court users committees. I believe that we need to look at how these platforms have worked, how effective have they been. I think like the MAT, we've had it since, is it 2015 or
2015?
Yes, 2015. Yeah. It's now 7 years. We need to go back and see how effective has it been, because I know sometimes we've seen some of those very public spats between the agencies. Yeah. And but I believe that that particular forum is critical to be able to address some of these issues. And allow me also to address something that Wakili said in terms of morals. You know, Wakili, we can't run away from morals. Yes, and that is the reason why I'm saying that even me as an individual, if I was to come and but let me use a very close example. Even if I was to come to your house and ask for a job as, say, your children's nanny, and I've just been recently accused of stealing, you will not give me that job. You will not give me that job at all. Yeah. You will not touch me with a 10-foot pole. But why do we allow politicians? Why is it that politicians, we seem to have lower standards for them, for them to get these public positions where they're oversighting billions of shillings? We don't ask those questions. We are not scrutinizing. What cases are you answering in court? Are you currently under investigation? Because the truth is, if I'm currently under investigation, I will not get that job as a nanny in Wakili's house. He will not give it to me. But then he's saying that because, yes, I know the law. And the law, we also have to agree that that is a deficiency. And we know what happened. We know the drama that happened when we were debating the issues around Chapter 6. Yeah. I mean, you know that Chapter 6 was a much bigger chapter. But then what did politicians say? They said, corruption will not be thus for such a long time. Let us not have so many provisions on corruption, because this is something we'll deal with quickly. Yeah. 11 years down the line, was it 12 years since the promulgation of the Constitution? The corruption issues have become bigger. Yeah. When it came to the law, the Leadership and Integrity Act, we saw what happened in Parliament in 2011 at the point when this law was being debated. They seriously adulterated those particular provisions. Otherwise, some of these things that you're talking about, the debarring of people who have been accused of corruption until, they're cleared by a court of law. Those are things which had been suggested in the law, but because politicians, of course, in their, guided by vested interests and self-aggrandizement, decided to remove those provisions. And that is the problem now we have today, where come August 9th, we'll be faced with a lot of people on our names on our ballot papers who are not fit to hold office. Yeah. And those are people who cannot get jobs in our homes, but we want to give them jobs in public offices to oversight billions of shillings. Surely, there must be something that we can do around that. And the law, you see, the law exists to serve people. It exists for the public good. If it's not serving us, then it means that we go back to it and see, then how do we address some of these loopholes? So I strongly believe that this is something that we need to address, because for me, others will continue to talk about corruption. 10 years from now, Trevor, of course, maybe I'll probably be graying. My hairs will be graying. I will still come to the studio and I'll talk about the same things. If we don't address particularly that whole issue around leadership and integrity, because we'll still have the same characters oversighting our public resources, because we don't want to deal with it, and we are using the escape of the law to say, yes, they can appeal. Yes, we know that they can appeal, but even as they appeal, excuse them from vying or expressing interest in public office. Let them clear their names the same way I would do for any other job, and then only look at or admit people into public office who are suitable and have not been tainted by corruption or any other ethical issue. Yeah,
Omari, why do some of these cases fail, in your view, as a legal expert?
You want me to disclose technicalities?
Especially, the way you guys poke holes into cases that are so obvious that this is something that is wrong, but somehow people still walk away scot-free.
It's called the legal theory of defense. For surety and for certainty, almost everybody arrested and charged in court, none is innocent. I mean, that is what a defense lawyer takes it, that this guy, there must be some truth in what the DCI is saying or the EACC is saying. The serious lawyer goes for technicalities in the matter, not merit. Technicalities. For example, my good sister here had her. They have said that there is an animal called MAT, a multi-agency team, which is an illegal entity. The Constitution gives the DPP his mandate.
Yeah.
The DCI, the police officer, their mandate.
Yeah.
When you are bringing an animal and creating that a synergy within investigation, you are putting the DPP inside.
Yeah.
He's the one going to prosecute. On a simple technicality, the lawyer will ask, was the DPP's office part and parcel of the investigation? That enough. Kenyans, you lose that case. I'll give you an example of a good guy called Ocampo Moreno from the ICC. His job was a prosecutor.
Yeah.
He pretended to come here to investigate. On that technicality, they lost.
So it doesn't matter what he found.
The law, and this is what I'm saying, people need to understand, it is the law as it is, and it will not change. You can make noise, go and amend the law. Any technical mistake, the burden of proof is beyond any reasonable doubt. It's not me, it is not anybody. That is the international standard. So what I'm trying to say, let us recruit people to those positions who have the competence to know the law. We have misplaced personnel in critical positions based on morals, based on ethnicity, based on politics. They do not understand the technicality of the law. What is the problem with the BBI? The content is 100% perfect. No problem about the content. What did the lawyers go for? The procedures, the processes. So, and I'm addressing the serious agencies involved in graft.
Yeah.
Lawyers, defense team are not interested in the content. They are looking at the technicalities. For example, you remember the case that was before the Deputy Chief Justice. The lawyers never went for whether there was merit. They simply asked one question: how was this evidence obtained? Not that this evidence is bad. Out of that one question, the case was lost. So I'm advising the appointing authorities, appoint such qualified people who know the law, like my good sister here, who will tell you asset recovery, if they don't follow the procedures and the rules under that act, I will walk away with the budget of Kenya for free, because I will not answer to the allegation that I've stolen the whole budget. I will answer who investigated MAT. That is the target. For example, another question I'm advising her, they found a lot of issue. The question of the decision to charge document.
Yeah.
You are involved. We are intending to declare that decision to charge document an illegality. That how many cases I've got. Trevor, let me tell you one issue. The EACC, I wish my good friend Kagusha was here. At one time, the commission has left. The EACC pretended to prosecute matters. Engineer Kamau went to court and said the commission was not fully constituted. It's not about whether I'm guilty or not guilty. The Court of Appeal said the commission was not fully constituted. All matters collapsed. So what I'm addressing, and this is the international best practices, kindly appointing authorities, appoint the best brain to the position. Any justification in law is not provided for.
Yeah.
That, you know, we had a lot of pressure. That does not say. So my position is, we will lose the war on graft, not because the people have not stolen.
Yeah.
We will lose the war on graft because we have not put managers who are in expertise, who are serious defense thinkers If I was the appointing authority, some of these positions,
Yeah.
I will bring retired judges and put them there.
Yeah.
So that they are seeing the defense normally comes this way.
Yeah.
Can we prepare our case in anticipation of the defense? Now, where we are in this country, the defense, nobody factors our role.
Yeah.
So you are investigating, you are charging, but you are not asking the question, what are the likely defenses the lawyers are going to raise?
Yeah.
And that is why the majority of landmark cases are collapsing day in, day out. Not because of merit, but because of technicalities.
Yeah.
Lastly, Trevor, if you look at the battle between the state and the defense, the instructions of the state is to convict.
Yeah.
Our instructions is to ensure none is convicted. It can't go away.
Yeah.
Today, when I'm appointed a DPP or I'm appointed an AG, my role now is to ensure everybody is jailed.
Yeah.
That is the chameleonic nature of law. That depends who instructs you.
Yeah.
The CJ was a serious practitioner of law in the private sector. But now the CJ is the enforcer of the law from the state side. We can't be in the same breath. So my advice is, let them sit with serious defense team lawyers so that we advise them that this law needs to be dealt with this way. If you're doing this investigation, cover this area. For example, you get one, you are saying these matters are taking so long. The governor of Samburu, 250-something witnesses. All of them must give evidence. Are you telling me that case can end? 256 witnesses, accused people in one charge sheet at 30. I was in the matter for NYS. There were more than 56 accused people in one charge sheet. The defense team, each accused person has 5-6 serious lawyers. One witness at the dock will take not less than 2 years. Are we like
just one?
Just one, because every lawyer will cross-examine this person. So that is what I'm saying. The technical aspect of management of corruption matters in this country has failed. The president has been failed by those people. The political wing, the president has goodwill for these matters to proceed so that Kenyans, but the technical aspect of management of this case has failed. You cannot go to a department and arrest from the CEO to the cleaner, who is going to be the witness, when you should have only gone for the CEO. First, the CEO, get 2 witnesses, produce evidence, the witnesses testify, in 2 weeks' time, there is a conviction. So, management of prosecutorial powers. And I'm talking to her because she funds a lot. They are the eyes of the world. The reason why Kenya is not going forward, we want to prosecute for optics. Carry thousands of people every Friday to court. The story ends there. On the question of morals, I remember I was in a matter of the Kianjakoma story, where it was almost thought that those guys will not be given bail. And the position of the law is very clear. They are innocent until proved guilty. So I want everybody to take it that fight to convict. Another issue, Trevor, and I'm giving this advice for free, I'm not going to charge any entity, is the amount of time we are wasting on opposing bail. 99% of all the opposition on bail, they lose. If the state said, my priority, my objective is convict, arrest this guy, we are not opposing bail, tomorrow the case starts. We take 6 months arguing about bail. that is not an issue to recover our money as citizens.
Yeah.
So if the state changed that policy and said, as we are saying, we have evidence, give him the bond term, the court says, you take this. A landmark ruling by a magistrate, Daniel Ogot, was dismissed by the High Court. He said, I will not take a plea unless the state has served the evidence. Today here, you'll be arrested and be charged. Trevor, I'm in very many of those matters. You'll be surprised a year down the line. The person took a plea, there are no witness statements for the case to start. Who would you blame? The judiciary. But the judiciary cannot start the process until the defense has been given the evidence that they are going to use. So I have indicted the administrative aspect of the EACC of corruption matters, that they are failing the head of state. That cannot be gainsaid. They are failing the head of state. A government bureaucracy is such a monster. The EACC is such a monster in terms of bureaucracy. The money we pump there, the DCI, the money we pump there, the asset recovery, the money citizens are pumped there. All these entities cannot claim that they don't know what Omar is saying. Can you put your house in order? By the time you are presenting this matter in court, the witness statements are there, the witnesses are there, the court is always available, the courts are always available. The matter starts. So in my own view, and I think this is a good day that I have taught them without them paying my fees, that the technical aspect. Number two, the explanatory process of these entities is wanting. I was taking the asset recovery. This is the first time Kenyans are seeing the asset recovery in this media. They should put a budget to tell Kenyans what they do. And that if you write a simple letter and tell the asset recovery, Omari has built a massive building here. And Omari is a clerk at the judiciary. And that story ends. These guys will swing there and get that property recovered. But they are not known. Why? The budget has not there. The other day, we talk of very many of these issues. The cooperative issue, money being stolen by the there's an entity called Sasra. You can't know where they are. So in my own view, the public imaging aspect of government now is critical to every government entity, that you must tell the citizens, because they are the ones who pay you, what you do and the tools you use to induce them to give you information.
All right. Omari, I'm fascinated by what you've just said here in terms of, so if person A you found that has stolen this laptop, for example, and the way that evidence has been acquired is wrong. So it doesn't matter whether you are sure that person A stole this laptop. The only problem is, how did you get this evidence?
The lawyer will not go about the stealing of the laptop.
They agree that
the question the lawyer will be asking, the aspect of the procedures. One, at the investigation stage, did the procedure of investigations comply with the police standing orders? Did it comply with the Criminal Procedure Code? Did it comply with the constitutional provisions of investigation?
So
number two,
stolen, nobody cares.
The processing of this guy who stole your laptop, was he detained for 6 months in a police station instead of within 24 hours? The lawyer will be handling that fundamental human rights of that thief were violated. The question of whether he stole will only come when all these loopholes
have been seen,
have failed. Then that is what Kenyans need to see. If you look at a court called the Judicial Review, it is a court that has been created to challenge anybody aggrieved by any decision of a government agency. EACC is a government agency. The DPP is a government agency. HA is a government agency. So the question is, immediately they want to arrest the guy. The lawyers have gone to the Judicial Review Commission and said, wait a minute. this was not done according to the law. Was this person called to be heard under Article 47, a fair administrative action? No. So most cases are dying on technicalities. Is it that government is deficient of critical thinkers to tell the agency, follow this law? It is long, it is painful, but we are assured that our case will not be thrown out on technicalities. That is, to me, what I'm addressing the whole nation, that as citizens, we have now very many campus heading very many government institutions, and out of their either inexperience or rush to please certain quarters, they have ignored some fundamental steps, and the defense team as hawks are simply looking at what does the procedure say. For example, Trevor, somebody has forged your signature. And you come and say, no, this is not my signature. Then we arraign Masinde in court. Then the lawyer asks, did your signature go to the DCI for forensic examination? No. The lawyer sits and goes on Facebook, because the case has died. A mere technicality that the signature was not verified by an expert. So is it rocket science for the people manning these institutions to know that that is why they are losing cases day in, day out on purely technicalities?
Colonel, how do we fix this whole thing?
Thank you, Trevor. Wow, Wakili, you know, he's a defense lawyer, and he has clearly stated that they use technicalities. So it's not that the state is wrong in saying, you know, so-and-so has committed this offense, and so therefore we are pursuing you. But I want to agree with him on the issue of administratively tying up the loose ends that may be there, so that we are able to win almost all the cases that we present before the court. But I also want to disagree with him on the issue of MAT, that it is an illegality. MAT is not an illegality because it was set up by His Excellency the President. It is just an administrative directive by His Excellency the President that is bringing all these agencies together. Why are we being brought together, Trevor? It is so that we can synergize these agencies. We have these high-level corruption cases that we must deal with as a state. So instead of dealing in the silo mentality that has always been there, Wakili, we have DCI who has his investigators, who is probably investigating the same case that is being investigated by EACC. The President said, why don't we sit together? And this is under the chairmanship of the Honorable Attorney General. Why don't we sit? Do we have any cases that we can synergize as all these agencies, so that we can get the high impact that the President is looking for? So it is really not an illegality, and it has achieved a lot, and especially in the field of asset recovery, if I may say so. One of among the very first cases that the Asset Recovery Agency filed was a result of this multi-agency team. If you remember the NYS cases, all those properties were now forfeited to the state, and it was as a result of this synergized process. Right? I'm not saying there are no challenges, and I'm not a prosecutor, so I cannot really defend the prosecutors in terms of presenting the accused persons before the witness statements are ready. But when we sit together as this multi-agency team, we are able to bring in investigators from DCI, we're able to bring in investigators from EACC. Can we then sit together and actually pursue this one case together? And then we're able to get the results, you know, faster. And we're able to present this documentation that Omari will be seeking for in court when we present the accused person in court. Right. However, like I said, why then the asset recovery? Asset recovery is going to, first of all, to punish Mr. Omari's client. It is going to destabilize the criminal cartels that are there, the criminal cartels that are there. If we take away the benefit, Trevor, and this is what I need the Kenyans to say. And Omari is saying we have not come out here. You know, the public agencies are not known. We appreciate that. And that is why we are taking up that mantle and saying you need to know, Kenyans need to know about Asset Recovery Agency. Because it is a tool that is going to destabilize Omari's clients. And then we will not be having the technicalities that Omari is telling us here. When you come to the asset recovery route, it is a different process. Then we'll deal with him. He'll have to explain to us.
This burden of proof now shifts to him.
Yes,
Okay.
now it will be him to explain to us where his client actually received this proceeds or the benefit.
Okay.
Yes.
All right, I have to take some quick feedback, then I come to you, Sheila, as we wind up on this conversation. Let's bring up what you're saying online here. Freddie Matiba says, hoping that the DCI Kenya, EACC Kenya, and ODPP are listening to Danstan Omari. All right, let's see what else you're saying. Chalo Woodrose, he says, playing politics with corruption cases has affected the fight against corruption in Kenya. People normally gang up to defend their own charged in court due to graft-related cases. Any corrupt individual should carry his or her own cross, okay? You call yourself 90 Club. Danstan cash bail system delays everything. The cash bail just looks like a legal way courts become corrupt, right? You'll respond to that in closing remarks. Chumo Yusuf says the directions of the recent rulings, the hefty fines upon successful case hearing, is the way to go, okay? Arisa Rogers says the war on graft was to end in corruption. Graft was introduced in education system. Make corruption a compulsory unit or subject in all levels. Why is it easy to know that he or she stole, but very hard to convict, discover, or even fine? Okay? Engineer Lazaro says, no, Omari colleagues in law fields are the wheels corrupt people have been using to drag cases for so many years. Lawyers are the obstacles in the fight against graft. That's the truth. Okay? Mtetezi Masese says, make no mistake, an isolated ruling that will be appealed and dragged in courts for years to come is by no means an indicator that we are winning the war against corruption. Is there a war against corruption in the first place? EACC Kenya alone cannot win, okay? So the collective responsibility. Okelo Mwalimu here says, one, corruption is being won at a much slower rate than it's being lost. Cases take too long. Graft lords use stolen money to get a battery of lawyers making cases to drag on. Timelines should be in place for speedy resolution of graft cases. More needs to be done. Hussein says the Kenya court is moving in the right direction on graft. Let corruption cases be heard and determined within 1 or 2 years. Asamo says the main reason why corruption cases are taking long is because they involve big fish who hire top lawyers who use their connections to delay them using many injunctions. Have you seen chicken thieves having many injunctions? Okay? All right. And Sheila, that's an interesting perspective because it is true. The high and mighty do hire quite a battery of lawyers, but when it's a shorter case of a person who's accused of stealing chicken, the prosecution moves faster. Comes back to what you were saying earlier on. And now as we head into the election season, how then do you deal with the issue of handouts? Because one way or another, it is still corruption. Yeah, it is. It's in essence voter bribery. Yeah. And we've seen those cases. I'm concerned about the conflict, or you've seen the public fight for whatever has been left by politicians every time they visit, you know, they have been to a town to conduct their campaigns. But we have refused to regulate campaign funding. So what do we expect? We have not regulated campaign funding. The regulations were thrown out by Parliament, obviously in their own vested interest, because they don't want to be held accountable for how they acquire their sources of campaign funds, who is funding them. You know, they don't want to be transparent because we currently have the election campaign finance law enacted in 2013, but 9 years later, we are yet to implement that law. And now it looks as if even maybe the earliest we're looking at it is in 2027, though as TI and other institutions, we have gone to court to see what remedies can be found in terms of regulation of campaign financing. But it all boils down to how accountable politicians are for how they are raising their sources of campaign funds. Because without that, then all this money that you're seeing being used to bribe voters, soon you'll see a lot of cases of voter intimidation, even the violence. You know, that money is coming from somewhere. You know, all these are proceeds of crime and corruption. You know, when you talk about terrorism financing, wildlife crime, human trafficking, all these monies are coming in and now are being used for political campaigns. But because we have not regulated, these politicians are not compelled to say who's giving them the money and how much and what they're spending it on. And those are problems that we'll continue to see. And the other thing that, we also have to consider is the nexus between, how they're using the campaign funds
and how money will be stolen once they get into office. Because if I've bribed as a politician, if I've spent money on citizens, that 50 bob, you know, that I'm spending, I will seek to regain it the moment I get into office. And that's why we have all these cases. Look at all these cases touching on high-profile individuals, governors, members of parliament. I think in this period between 2017 and 2022, we have seen the highest number of elected public officials who have been charged in court. Yeah, and if you look back, maybe you can even trace it to how you know, how are they spending during their campaigns. You know, when the moment they get to office, they'll try to recover this money. But allow me to just also respond to what Wakili has said on technicalities. I agree. Yeah. When you look at some of the cases of corruption, there was a case, I think, involving the former Cabinet Secretary of Lands. This is the current land case, which was lost on technicality. There was the engineer Michael Kamau case, but also a lot of cases. Remember the famous 2015 list of shame tabled by the president in March 2015. We lost a lot of those cases, and EACC had to go back to the first step to just get these cases back in order because of technicalities. But I also believe that our institutions are learning. If you look at how NYS 1 case was handled and now how NYS case, the NYS 2 case, you'll see that there's some learning that maybe the ODPP has applied. But I think this is why I'm saying the capacity strengthening is important in terms of, I think our institutions are now learning that, yes, some of these technicalities of the process is keen, and so we must pay attention to it. And I believe when you look at how some of these cases have been handled in latter months and how they were handled, say, 5 years ago, I think we've seen a trend, a change of trend in terms of how they are being managed. But this is also the reason why administrative channels like the MAT are important. Yeah. Because in these platforms, they are able to, you know, liaise. Yeah. The investigators, the prosecutors are able to liaise with the KRA, FRI, and FRC and others, and ARA as well. So these administrative platforms are very crucial for me. Yeah. Wakili has raised a challenge in terms of, you know, their legality, but I believe nothing stops us. All these are legal entities, some constitutional. There's nothing that stops them from coming together to be able to work together for the benefit of Kenyans. Because if you remember how corruption cases were moving along the pipeline before 2015, or even if we go back before the Constitution, many of them were being lost, you know, because there was no synergies or no collaboration between many of these. The prosecutors, the investigators were not speaking to the prosecutors, and so there were all these open clashes, and you know, this one is saying this, that one is saying this one has an opinion on this case, and those cases were just not moving. Okay. So I believe that synergy is very critical. Okay. But my other point also, even as we focus on asset recovery, let us not also forget, before we get to the point where I now have to go for the likes of Wakili Omari, and you've had his diatribe on technicalities, because that will always be where they will hide. They will always hide there. Yeah. Before I have to start engaging Wakili, before we have to start chasing those billions of shillings that have been lost, what can be done to prevent the loss of these resources? We really must pay attention to that. Okay. So in relation to this, as I've just listened to this conversation on asset recovery, there's something we're also not doing well. Okay. That is on a declaration of wealth, assets, wealth, liabilities, and income and liabilities. Right now we have, we are supposed to be, I think our public office is supposed to declare wealth. Is it once every 2 years? Every 2 years. But what happens when they declare that wealth? What happens to that information? It is locked up in brown envelopes somewhere. Even their own engines where those stores where they kept. When you want to pull a file for Trevor, you won't find it. Yeah. So there's no verification that occurs. There's no monitoring. There's no aggregation. Yeah. That information is not available to the public. So we have no way of tracking, because I believe if we're able to track, this is what I declared in 2014. This is what I've declared in 2016 and 2018. So that now Colonel Wakili can now be able to go and say, by the way, there's a problem here. There's a disturbing trend. What this person was earning in 2015 and now what they're now declaring
doesn't add up.
It doesn't add up. Okay. And that is now when you start following. Right. Instead of getting to the point where now we have to investigate, we have to go to court for another 12 years, then, you know, asset recovery takes over. So I believe there are things we need to do, even in regard to lifestyle audits. I know that there's a law currently pending in Senate, but this is also something which can then complement a robust wealth declaration system, so that we can be able to see these things before or, you know, and raise the red flag early enough.
Okay.
Questions around also open procurement. I think procurement has been said to be the epicenter of corruption in this country.
Yeah.
We lose all these cases. They are touching on procurement in one way or another.
Okay.
What can we do to make it a more open process?
Okay.
Now we're talking about beneficial ownership. Trevor, you had a discussion just 2 days ago on that.
Yeah.
You know, how does this help in terms of procuring? And because now we have situations where government is doing cases with, is doing business with government. You know, as a government officer, I am supplying, you know, and doing services and works for the government. That's a whole question of conflict of interest. But because we don't know the true ownership of these companies that are being engaged by the government. So
yeah.
I think those are things that need to be done as a preventive aspect. Someone has, and also the issue around conflict of interest. There's a law that I think was supposed to be done, was put together, was developed by the AG's office, but that has gone quiet.
Yeah.
And I think the president, if you listen to the anti-corruption conference that was held in Bomas in 3 years ago or 4, one of the obligations that was put on I think it was the Office of the Attorney General,
yeah.
was to ensure that there's a conflict of interest law in place.
Okay.
That is not in place yet. But all these things we are seeing
yeah.
is because of conflict of interest.
Okay.
And you know, our failure to be able to address conflict of interest in the public sector.
All right.
And lastly,
yeah.
someone has talked about education. I think it's very, very important, because before we get here as grown-ups,
yeah.
where you're now chasing us to, you know, take us to court or to recover money, there's something fundamental that needs to be done.
Okay.
When people are still at their, you know, are still at a young age.
Okay.
You know, the issue around values. How do we embed values in young people to ensure that they in 20 years, these are not
yeah.
things that we'll be sitting to discuss. You know, corrupt thieves are not people that we'll be chasing,
yeah.
but everyone will be. You know, when you look at Article 10, those
yeah.
are values that you'll be seeing in every person.
All right.
But there's something critical around education and even behavior change. So for
okay.
me, prevention.
Okay.
You let us recover the resources, let us chase after the corrupt,
yeah.
but before we get to that, prevention.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we've run out of time now on this conversation. I'm sure we'll have this conversation again another time. Sheila Masinde, Executive Director, Transparency International Kenya, Dunstan Omari, Advocate.